Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, Zaydeen of Imam Hussein, I welcome you to the 5th lecture in our association of lectures today. And just like that, we're halfway through our Ashra. And I was contemplating, pondering upon this, that time really waits for no one. And usually around this time, we would be having julus, majalis, matamdari, but even spending this amount of time at home in the memory of Imam Hussein, time has flown by. May Allah make the most of our ibadat, make the most of our efforts, and inshallah next year we may able to commemorate the passing, the martyrdom of Imam Hussein together. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Brother On Murtaza to start us off with the recitation of the Quran, please. On, are you with us here?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yeah, turn on the camera. Camera's turned on.
Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الآمين. لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you, On, for sharing such a beautiful recitation of the Quran. It is absolutely delightful seeing the youth participate every day, whether be it in their recitation and translations of the Quran, offering speeches, offering their salam and their bursa to our Bibi and to our Mawla. Now, without further ado, can I have Samar Hyder to come forward and recite his speech for us, please now. Samar, are you here?
Yes.
That's perfect, Samar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to offer my condolences to all the brothers and sisters, especially to the Imam of our time. On the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions during the holy month of Muharram, I would also like to thank Agha for sharing his knowledge and wisdom through his outstanding lectures. Today I'm going to recap one of his lectures and highlight a few points on how to identify and differentiate between a good scholar and a rogue scholar. There are 6 attributes of a good scholar. Number 1, a good scholar must have an extensive knowledge and should know how to deliver his message. Number 2, he must be active in the society and must address the ongoing issues. Number 3, a good scholar must have taqwa and must live a simple life. Number 4, he has to be courageous enough to speak the truth at any cost. Number 5, a good scholar should have basira and give directions to people with good plan. Number 6 and the last point is that scholars need to have a sense of sacrifice in order to push and advance a cause, and also to get rid of the corruption. Today is the 5th of Muharram, that is associated with the martyrdom of 2 sons of baby Zainab, Assalamu alayha, and Muhammad, who gave their lives for the cause of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the right path, so we continue to fly the flag of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Labaik ya Hussein, salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farjahum ajmain.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, labbaik ya Hussein. It is absolutely delightful to see even children as young as Samar show so much passion and love for Imam Hussein. Because after all, it is from Karbala that we learn that no one is exempt from fighting for Haqq. Where we have children as young as Hazrat al-Asghar, who at 6 months old became a martyr, and we have Hazrat Habib ibn Muzaffer, who in his old age became a martyr. We have the examples of Hazrat John, who was a slave of Imam Hussein. We have the example of Hazrat Wahab Qalbi, who was a Christian man who saw the plight of Imam Hussein and came to his aid. We have the example of Hazrat Hur, who was the leader of the army of the opposition, but on his time, when his time came, he knew where he stood. And that is the importance of tarbiyat. And as we can see with the children here, as we can see with, the shining lights of our lectures, of our programs, who come here and contribute with us every day, that upbringing your children with the love of Imam Hussein, with this passion, with this intensity, is crucial, because no matter where they end up in the world, this will be their compass. It will guide us back to our center. It will always lead us to fight for what is haqq, no matter how far we go, no matter even if we become the leaders of the armies of the enemies. Once the time comes, once our time comes, we will know what is right. May we always have the strength to follow in these examples. And now I would like to invite another young speaker. Now I would like to invite Ahmed Raza to present his salam. Ahmed, are you here?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farjahum.
असबाब लुट चुका है, खैमे भी जल चुके हैं। असबाब लुट चुका है, खैमे भी जल चुके हैं। जुल्मों सितम के सूरज आहों में ढल चुके हैं। एक लाश है बिस्तर है और ज़ैनब, कूफा का लश्कर है और ज़ैनब, आशूर का मंजर है और ज़ैनब। भाई की लाश रन में उड़ियां पड़ी हुई हैं। भाई की लाश रन में उड़ियां पड़ी हुई हैं। हम शेर सर पर रहना बेआसरा खड़ी हैं। अफसोस की चादर है और ज़ैनब, अफसोस का चादर है और ज़ैनब, कूफा का लश्कर है और ज़ैनब, आशूर का मंजर है और ज़ैनब। نانا کی قبر چھوٹی اے وطن بھی چھوٹا نانا کی قبر چھوٹی ہائے وطن بھی چھوٹا وہ گھر جو فاطمہ کا کل تک بسا ہوا تھا اجڑا ہوا وہ گھر ہے اور زینب اجڑا ہوا وہ گھر ہے اور زینب کفار کا لشکر ہے اور زینب آشور کا منظر ہے اور زینب قاسم کی لاش دیکھی اکبر کی لاش دیکھی قاسم کی لاش دیکھی اکبر کی لاش دیکھی عباس با وفا کی اصغر کی لاش دیکھی اب لاش برادر ہے اور زینب اب لاش برادر ہے اور زینب کفار کا لشکر ہے اور زینب آشور کا منظر ہے اور زینب صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. عاشور کا منظر ہے اور زینب. I don't think we give enough credit to the strength, the absolute fortress, that the fortitude and the absolute like unspeakable amount of willpower and faith that Sayeda Zainab displayed, where she saw not only both of her sons, but Hazrat Ali Akbar, who she raised as her own, her brother Abbas, who she said at the time where Hazrat Abbas was departing, she says, you know, my Baba Ali told me that in this very Kufa, one day you'll be brought back and your hands will be tied and you'll be brought back as a prisoner. He was my father, so I believed him. But I also thought, how would it be possible for me, who has a brother like Abbas, to come into a city like this? Who would have the audacity to make me their prisoner? This is a lady who has seen great loss, great tragedy, and as we know today is the Muksusi of her sons, who she did not even mourn until she completed her trip, returned to Medina, and upon setting her eyes on their musalla on which they used to pray, did she shed a tear for her own sons. May we all follow in the example of Sayeda Zainab. May we may we inspire our sisters and enable them to follow in her example. May we all be as strong as she was. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite our main speaker, Agha Shaykh Muzaffer Hyder, to come and speak on his topic today, which is how Surah Kahf tells us that we know absolutely nothing. Shaykhana, are you with us?
I'm with you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Rahmatullah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I'd like to start by giving my condolences to all those believers out there who have deep-seated pain in their hearts for the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I'd also like to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to be among those who will avenge the blood of Imam Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. I'd also today particularly like to thank the organizers again of this event, and the brother who spoke just before, the salam was beautiful as well, and the brother who the brother who gave a khulasa, as we call it, a recap of what we discussed in the previous session about how to identify the rogue scholars. It was really cute. I mean, I think everybody at home was just thinking, mashallah, that is so cute. It's really good to see. Inshallah, may Allah give the tawfiq to all the parents out there to push our children to do such things, because it's really good. It has an impact on their this world and the akhirah. It teaches them speaking skills, and it also teaches them to, get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understand the deen. Today, what we're going to be discussing is about how Surah Kahf teaches us that we know nothing. I'd like to start with a story which some of you might appreciate, some of you might not. And the story goes like this. It's a personal story again from my life, and it's basically about a friend that I used to have. And this friend, he was a good friend. It was back in the time when I was like really young, probably 10, 11. His name was Jack. That's the end of the story. The point is, you don't know Jack. Now, let's quickly move on now. So there's 3 basic structures or elements to Surah Kahf. Before we dive into these 3 basic stories of Surah Kahf, however, I'd like to point out that Surah Kahf is central to the era that we are living in right now. They say, and the ahadith teach us, when it comes to Surah Kahf, it's basically about teaching us and helping us to recognize the Dajjal and recognize Imam Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. If we get connected to Surah Kahf, it will certainly help us, particularly in the end times. Why? Why do the ahadith teach us this? I don't know. Let's explore. There's 3 basic stories. So let's open up on these stories. The first is the story of Ashab al-Kahf, the youths of the cave. The second story is the story of Musa and Khidr, the great prophet Musa, and the entity of Khidr. And the third story is that of Dhul Qarnayn. Okay, so each one of these is a type of test. Allah is showing us a test through each of these. Okay, so the first one, the Ashab al-Kahf, the youths of the cave, it is the test of faith. The second story is the story of Khidr and Musa, and it is the test of knowledge. And the third story is the story of Dhul Qarnayn, and it's to do with the test of power. Today, we're going to be exploring the first test, and this is the test of faith. We probably won't have time to go on to the next 2 stories, and we're going to have to save that for another session. So let's dive right in. The people of the cave. Let's first go through the story. What is the actual story? It's pretty simple, actually. Youths tired of leave that area. They leave where that polytheism is taking place, where those sins are taking place. They leave the town. Okay. Then what happens? They find themselves in a cave. It wasn't like they had a travel agency back then. No, they didn't have a hotel to stay in. No, it was purely because of their faith that they chose to leave. They made it essentially a leap of faith. Which is why we refer to this as a test of faith, because it takes tremendous faith to do something like that. They leave, and what happens to them is that they end up in a cave. Right, so they end up in this cave. Then what happens? They go to sleep. When they wake up, one of them says to another, "How long have we been asleep for?" And somebody else says, "Maybe it was a day." Maybe it was part of a day. Then one of them says, here, take this coin, go into the town and see if you can get some food for us because we're all hungry. So he goes into the town. But before he goes, his friend stops him and he says, before you leave this cave and before you go into the town, be very careful. Remember, those people might persecute you. They might attack you and they might force you to join their religion, which is a false deviant religion. So be careful, hide who you are. But when the brother goes into that environment, he realizes, wow, this place looks kind of different. Things don't seem the way that they were before. Strange. He goes to the shop and he tries to buy something and the shopkeeper looks at the guy's clothes and he says, you're weird. Then he takes the coin and he says, this coin is from 300 years ago. Wow, we haven't seen one of these in ages. I've only seen these in museums. Therein, it is discovered by the youths of the cave that they hadn't slept for just a day or half a day. No, they had slept for an entire 3 centuries. 300 years they had gone to sleep in that cave. And now they woke up. So then they go back to the cave, they go back to sleep. And the people of that civilization, they say, hey, what should we do with these people? They're sleeping and we don't know how long they're going to be sleeping for. One of them says, let's build a masjid on top of them. That, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, is the end of the story, or so it would seem, because these same people, this Ashab al-Kahf, have a destiny which has not yet unfolded. They are still sleeping, and they some of our hadith actually tell us that these people will be among the helpers of Imam Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuh sharif. Now that you know the story, okay, so let's go back and explore what is significant about this and what we can actually learn, while we try to ignore the fact that my daughter is knocking on the door right now. Let's go back to the story from the beginning and try to explore what it actually means. First of all, the first thing I want to say about this story in the Quran is it is no insignificant tale, and it is absolutely relevant to today and particularly the month of Muharram. Why? It's because when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was martyred, and when they cut off the head of our Mawla Hussein and they stuck it on the spear and they displayed it as a symbol for all those who dared to rise up against Yazid, to say that if you rise up against the tyrant of your time, you will face the same consequences, the blessed head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam spoke. That's right. It spoke. Those blessed lips moved. He recited the Quran. That too. What verse did he recite? He recited, أَمْ حَسِبَتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. Or do you suppose that the inscription and the people of the cave are among our wonderful signs? For the longest time, I have been asking myself, and I've been asking Imam Hussein alayhi salam, why this verse? Of all the verses you could have recited, why this verse? There is another verse as well that he recited, but why this one? The more we contemplate, the more we ask, the Ahlul Bayt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond. And this is why I always say to my dear fellow youths, you need to ask questions. If you consider yourself to be a Shia particularly, remember that means a follower of the one who used to say, Suluni, Suluni, ask me, ask me. Our Mawla Imam Ali used to say this often, ask, ask. So if we ask, Allah will certainly respond. So why this verse? First of all, I want to say that, look, this verse is alluding to the story within Surah Kahf. And it's showing us that, look, there's something very special going on here. Don't think that this is just a fable. Don't ask, why this is kind of strange. What's the point of this story? No, there is always a significant point. You see, encapsulated within the story of Ashab al-Kahf, we will find the pain of the prophets. What is their pain? Remember, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is described in the Quran as Rahmatul lil Alameen. He is a mercy for the worlds. You see, the prophets had a pain in their hearts, and that pain dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, was me and you. That pain was, why are you not willing to make sacrifices for the religion? There is a secret in this verse which shows us what this, it will reveal to us what the hidden path is that we're supposed to be following, each and every one of us out there. Okay, so let's go back to it. What's the first thing that we discover about these people? They were youths. Okay, why does the Quran describe them as youths? If you look at the tafsir, they were not young by any stretch of the imagination. No, they were old men. They had big white beards. So why does the Quran describe them as youths? Well, part of the reason could be that to be a youth doesn't simply mean that you have a less age. No. What do we refer to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein? They are the Sayeda Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. They are the Sayyids, they are the masters of the youths of paradise. Have you ever wondered why we refer to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein as the masters of the youths of paradise? Why? Isn't that strange? Let me ask you a question. Are there any old people in heaven? Are there any old people in paradise? No, because everybody in paradise will be youthful. Now, what are we talking about? What does this youthfulness mean? Perhaps what it could be alluding to is this purity that youths have, right? There is this idealism, which Rahbar often talks about. Imam Khamenei, he's talked about this idealism. If you look at the youths, they believe that the world can be a better place. And when they see that it's not getting better, they get angry, they get upset. This is a good thing. We should be strong with all our energies. But what happens, unfortunately, is we lose that idealism. We start to think to ourselves, it's unrealistic. It's not practical. It won't actually happen. And because we lose that, we grow old in a spiritual sense. And we cease being those youths that the awliya of Allah are referring to. I want to give you an example of this. When I was younger, this is actually an actual story now. I'm not going to con you this time. An actual story from when I was younger. Before I came to the Hawza, we were sitting on this dinner table. It was a dinner party, and one of my uncles asked me, distant uncle, mind you, he asked me, so Muzaffer, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a journalist. I want to, not be an ordinary journalist. I want to go out there into the fray, and I want to, conduct really scary and dangerous interviews, so that people will be, I want to reveal the truth, basically. I was talking like a fiery youth, and that's precisely what this uncle said. He said, you silly boy. This is just the heat of youth, and it will vanish after a while. And that made me really angry. I was like, no, I'm being serious. This is what I want to do. I want to reveal the truth. I want to risk my life for getting the truth out there. See, this is precisely what happens. Many of the youths out there, they have this idealistic nature in them, but because of certain voices that they are surrounded by, slowly, that gets corroded away. And then guess what? They turn into old men. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have white beards and their teeth are falling out, or their backs broken. No, it means that from a spiritual point of view, they are now elderly. They've lost that sense of faith. They don't believe that a change is possible. They're no longer a youth in the divine sense of it. Look at the eyes of Imam Khamenei. You will see youth. Look at the eyes of Imam Khomeini, you will see youth. Even though they're old now, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, same thing. A lot of the awliya Allah, the way they speak is sometimes very, you will listen to it and you'll be like, that's so idealistic. Why? Because they still have that purity of faith maintained. And as we said, the story of Ashab al-Kahf is all to do with faith. So that's the first thing, the idea of these people being youths. What's the second thing? What do we see these youths do? They migrate. They leave the society, and that's very difficult to do. You see, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, if we find ourselves in an environment which is having a detrimental effect on our faith and the faith of our children, we have to have the courage to migrate out of that society. And this is actually showing us that migrating for the sake of Allah is a righteous thing. That's why the Quran often says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا وَحَاجَرُوا, those who do jihad and they migrate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I want to quickly point this out, because one of the arguments that immediately comes to people's minds in this regard is, well, is it not a greater struggle to be in a bad environment and yet maintain your faith? And this might sound like an intelligent argument, but is it actually an Islamic argument? Is this what the Ahlul Bayt teach us? Not necessarily. Actually, if you look at the kind of methodology presented to us by the Quran and the Hadith, they are all about actually distancing ourselves from environments which could potentially lead us to sinning. Not staying there and saying, I'm strong. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. And human beings have actually been created weak, the Quran is telling us. You're not strong. As much as you think you might be strong, and even if I go to the worst of environments, I'm going to be fine. Not necessarily. You think you can be surrounded. You can go to a nightclub, be listening to music, but you'll put your fingers in your ears, of course, because you're a good Muslim. But then there'll be, illicit behavior going on all around you, alcohol all around you, but your faith is immaculate? Really? That's what you think? Let's look at an example from the Quran. Prophet Yusuf. Prophet Yusuf was no ordinary human being. He was a prophet. He had a divine connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yet, when he is locked in a room, Zulaykha locks the door, and then she says, come towards me. Does he say, I'm tough, I can protect myself, I won't succumb to this, I'm a prophet of God? No. He runs to the door. He tries to escape. So just think about this for a moment. If a prophet runs to escape such an environment, who are we to say, oh, I'm strong, I can stay in such an environment, and my faith is actually increasing, I'm actually getting stronger? Not necessarily. Sometimes, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, the struggle is in running to the door and trying to escape, whichever the environment, whatever kind of environment we find ourselves in, if it's leading us towards sins, okay? So that's the second point. Now, the third point, these youths, they go to the cave and they fall asleep. Allah puts them to sleep for 300 years. What does this show us? It shows us, dear brothers and sisters, especially to my youths, I say this, miracles can happen for you. The youths of the cave were neither prophets nor imams, nor did they actually have a leader among them who's even named. We don't even know his name, right? So they didn't have a prophet. They didn't have an imam. What did they do? They acted on faith, pure faith. They knew this was the right thing to do. They did not care what people would say about them. They did it anyway. And because they did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a miracle. And no ordinary miracle. Allah gave them such a miracle that those people who lived in medieval times, they had guns, they didn't have guns, they didn't have anything, any of the technology that we have today. Just imagine it for a moment. These were people who, according to some of our hadith, were people just after Jesus, before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam even brought the religion of Islam. Okay, so they didn't even have the supreme guidance that we have today. This Quran, the Ahlul Bayt, they didn't have that. And yet they acted on the gut instincts of divine personalities and the principles which were set down by Nabi Isa. And then Allah gave them such an honor, such a miracle, that they will be alive and they will be the servants of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif, when many people alive today are choosing not to be the servants of Imam Mahdi. Think about that honor. The point that I want us to gain from this today is, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, believe in miracles. Believe in miracles, because they can happen and they will happen if we tread on the path, if we're willing to make a sacrifice. And there's another quick point that I want to add here. In Dua Ahad, one of the things that we pray, Dua Ahad is one of the beautiful du'as that is recommended for us to recite in the mornings. And it's all about Imam Mahdi. One of the things that we say in there is, if I am to die before the Dhuhr and the Qiyam, the uprising of Imam Mahdi, raise me from my grave in my shroud with my sword ready so that I can protect the Imam of my time. This might appear like a far-fetched thing to some people, but actually no, there is a reality behind it. There is a Quranic precedence behind it. Miracles can happen. That's the third point. The fourth point that I want to get from this is, have you ever stumbled across those? For those of us who have read it, and I want to re-emphasize again, everybody should be reading the Quran in their own languages, in English, in Urdu, in whatever way you can understand the Quran, because even on the surface level, we have a lot to gain from this divine book. Have you ever stumbled across those verses where it says, the fifth of them, some say there were 5 of them and the 6th of them was the dog, and some say there were 6 of them and there were 7th of them, and some say there were 8 of them and the 9th of them was the dog, and they're just guessing in the darkness. Why does Allah deem it so necessary to, number one, say that people are, guessing about their numbers and they don't actually know, number one, and number two, why does Allah need to keep on emphasizing about the presence of this dog? Because as the Ashab al-Kahf, as these youths of the cave, they went to the cave, there was a dog guarding them. So why? And why is it so important to point out that people don't actually know how many their numbers were? Well, firstly, the idea of Allah pointing out that you don't know what their numbers were, there might have been 5, there might have been 6, is to show us the mentality of some people. Because unfortunately, what happens is people get caught up in arguing about petty little things. And what happens is they miss the point. In this example, the scholars were arguing, no, there was one school of thought that said there was 5 and the 6th of them was a dog. There was another school of thought that said there was 6 and the 7th of them was a dog, and so on and so forth. You guys, you're missing the point. There were people in a cave and there was a dog there. Can we just leave it at that and move on? No, some people just get stubborn. They just can't move on. And this is the case in many of the things that many of the problems that we face when it comes to serving the cause is precisely because of this. Nobody's getting the main point. For example, you're trying to get people to come forward for a cause. Come forward for the cause of Palestine. Some say, no, I'm Shia. Some say, oh, no, I'm Sunni. This is a Shia cause. Some say this, some that. Well, you're missing the point. People are being killed. People are being oppressed. The point here is don't miss the point. All right. Always remember that there is a central focus. Allah wants us to have focus when we attempt to do something for the cause. Now we'll go to the idea of the dog. Why does Allah have to mention that this dog is there? Why? Isn't that strange? Of all the animals, they have a dog there. Well, one of the reasons, again, goes back to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They say that Imam Hussein, our master Hussein, was thirsty on the day of Ashura. But he was thirsty for 2 things. The first of them was for water. The second of them was for loyalty. He was thirsty for loyalty. He was thirsty for allegiance and loyalty from people. And what Allah is alluding to through this verse of the Quran, or through these verses, is that, look, even the dog of Ashab al-Kahf has loyalty. And people do not have that same loyalty that a najis animal can have. And that najis animal, which if you saw it in the street, you would look down at it. Yet Allah takes that animal and He mentions it in the Quran. It becomes a divine symbol for us of loyalty. Subhanallah. How honored is that dog? And how dishonorable have many of us become where we do not answer the call of Imam Hussein like the people of Kufa. Okay, so this may be part of that reason. Now, since we've gone through all of these points, there is a verse now, after Allah tells us all of these divine realities, He tells us about the story of Ashab al-Kahf, He tells us about all these things, then He says a very special verse. He says, لا تقولوا لشيء إني فاعل ذلك غدا. He says, and do not say of a thing that I will do it tomorrow. Ah, subhanallah. Why now? Here's my question. Why does Allah say this? After telling us this story about Ashab al-Kahf, why does he tell us, do not say of anything that we will do it tomorrow? It's because we fool ourselves. It's one of the biggest traps that shaitan captures us in. One of the ahadith actually tells us that the trap of shaitan is telling people, don't worry, you can repent tomorrow. Don't worry, you can change tomorrow. And this is one of the traps that they get, especially the youths with. They tell you, don't worry, you're young. Tomorrow you can become really pious. Tomorrow you can pray really well. Tomorrow you can, Quran. Today, your religion seriously. Tomorrow, your sisters. Everybody who I've known who has had that mentality, I look at them today, they're getting older and they haven't made that change that they swore they would make. It's a trap. Shaitan is lying to us, and we're lying to ourselves if we say we're going to change. The idea is that, look, the people of the cave, imagine if they had said, tomorrow I'm going to do such and such. Imagine, they would not have been among the people of the cave. They would never have experienced such a great miracle. Think about it. Allah doesn't tell us these things in the Quran, but this is why I say to the brothers and sisters, we need to visualize the Quran. Imagine these youths, they're now going and they're saying, we're leaving the society. They must have had friends in that society. I bet you many of those friends said, don't worry, we're going to join you tomorrow. Guess what? Tomorrow never came. 300 years passed by. All those friends are now dead. لا تقولوا لشيء إني فاعل ذلك غدا. Don't say about a thing that I will do it in the morrow. I shall do it tomorrow. It doesn't exist. This is why they tell us that, look, they say that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. Anybody who says, tomorrow I'm going to change, it just doesn't work. It's a trap, okay? The Quran here is reminding us and telling us, live today, right? Become alive today, rather. And by the way, this mentality that we will get presented by so many people, even scholars, unfortunately, will tell us, live today, fight tomorrow. Well, guess what? There is no fight tomorrow. It doesn't exist tomorrow. The fight exists today. And this is why they say every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. Because as long as we keep telling ourselves, I will fight when Imam Mahdi comes, guess what? Tomorrow doesn't exist. It's a mystery. And we don't know. Exactly what we are doing today reflects what we would have done in the dry plains of Karbala. Now, that's all we have time for today, and I hope that we've benefited from it and learned from it, inshallah. There's just one thing that I'd like to go over with everybody before we go to the musibah, however. I received a question yesterday, which I wasn't able to answer because we ran out of time. But this question was it is so pinnacle. I actually got sent this message by a fellow youth out there. And this message, honestly, it can draw tears. This is what some of the youths are facing. And I want to read you his message so that you can understand this context. بِبَرَكَةِ الصَّلَوَاتِ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. So I'm just scrolling through my messages, and I read this. It was actually a voice message, so I wrote it down, and I'd like to read it to you today. And I pray that the brother doesn't get embarrassed. I'm not going to mention his name, but this is what he said. He said, in the past months, I used to post lectures of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. I used to speak about politics. I would shun America, speak the truth the way it is. I used to never water it down. I never used to water down anything. My friends would tell me, watch out, don't do this, you might be imprisoned, this and that. A Shaykh then came up to me and told me, do not bury yourself early. Speaking like this will get you burned. But then I think about it, this doesn't make sense, because that means that one is not having faith in Allah. This is the words of the youth, okay? And then he quotes the verse. Doesn't the Quran say, لا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا? Doesn't the Quran say, do not think of those who are slain in the way of Allah as dead? He said, aren't we supposed to believe in it in this way? And I thought that Allah would never let the blood of the martyr go in vain. An uprising will always happen if a martyr is slain unjustly. And if Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah is being sanctioned this badly today, if he's being targeted by the media today, then definitely the Mahdi will be sanctioned tomorrow, and he will be branded as a terrorist and all those bad things tomorrow as well. So if we're not supporting Sayyid today, how can we support Mahdi tomorrow? And he asked me a question at the end of all this, and he said, should I speak the truth or be careful? Okay. Dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, these are our youths out there. They want to make a change, but they are being dissuaded by others around them. You see this youth, this is the youthfulness of Ashab al-Kahf. This is precisely what we talked about throughout all of these sessions. The Shaykh as well, who comes up to him and scares this brother. He scares this brother and tells him, don't bury yourself early. Go back to the lecture about the scholars and the rogue scholars. Go back to point number 4 or 5, whichever one was discussing about cowardliness and courage. This is precisely. So the first thing I want to answer the brother right now, speak the truth, brother. It doesn't matter what people say to you. Speak the truth. Remember, in yesterday's session, although it was a short session, we discussed about the difference between being a Muslim and a mu'min. Remember, we said the Quran teaches us, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Only those are believers who believe in Allah the Messenger, they have no doubts, and then they do jihad in the way of Allah with their properties and their selves. For those youths, and I know that they are very few in number, but actually there's loads of them out there, but they're few in number in comparison to the rest of the Muslims, because that's just the way these things work, right? You need to know that you need to believe in Allah the Messenger, and you need to have no doubts on the path that you're walking on. Believe in it like Imam Khomeini believed in it. And you need to step on this path righteously and do jihad. Now, if you want to do jihad, dear brothers and sisters, you want to be a believer, you want to do jihad, guess what? The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi was asked, what is the best form of jihad? You know what the Holy Prophet said? He said, Kalimatun haqqin 'inda sultanin ja'ir. He said, a word of truth in the face of a tyrant leader. Because we've discussed there's so many different types of jihad you can do. On the military battlefield, you can fight on the economic battlefield, you can fight, boycotting Israel, you can do so many different things on the jihadi path. But then there's the cultural battlefield as well. The best form of jihad, according to the Holy Prophet, is to speak the word of truth in the face of the tyrants. Meaning we don't hide, we don't shy away. No, it's saying in their face you say it. And this, by the way, is precisely what Sayeda Zainab, salamullah alayha, did. She went right into the court of Yazid, the tyrant of her time, and she said words which shook the throne of that tyrant. When the tyrant was poking the head of Imam Hussein in a mocking way, and he said, are you pleased with what your God did with Hussein? Sayyidah Zainab absolutely courageously, with the courage of her father, Imam Ali alayhi salam, with the eloquence of her father, Imam Ali alayhi salam, with the guidance of her grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, she looks that tyrant in the face and she says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I see nothing but beauty. This is what it means. Isn't it strange, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, how sometimes, unfortunately, we will be told by people around us who are well-wishers. Don't get me wrong, they are well-wishers. They do want the best for you, but they just lack a few things. They lack a few traits. They lack a few minerals. They don't have that courage that they need. They come and tell us, be careful, slow down, right? Be careful is what they say. Be clever is what they say. And they disguise this pacifism in the clothes of being clever and being careful. Well, I'm sorry, but all of our role models were, na'udhu billah, were all stupid then, weren't they? Na'udhu billah, please forgive me for saying, all of our imams with this logic, if we apply this logic, all of our imams were, na'udhu billah, silly, weren't they? Because every single one of them was persecuted, was insulted, was attacked, was imprisoned, was poisoned, had their heads beheaded. Every one of our prophets went through this. Tell me a prophet or an imam who didn't go through it. Is it not their path we're supposed to be following? I say we should try to get ourselves arrested. We should try to get ourselves persecuted. And if we're not, we're doing something wrong. We're not being those believers that we're supposed to be. This is the pain of the prophets. This is why the lips of Imam Hussein alayhi salam were uttering these words. أَمَّا حَسِبَتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. Imam Hussein was missing those youths of Ashab al-Kahf. He was missing even their dog, the loyalty that that dog shows. How unfortunate that we don't manage to make those sacrifices today. Dear brothers and sisters, let me tell you something very special. It is a secret. Everybody thinks that, if you do these things, you're going to get attacked. You're going to get assaulted. You might, yes. But let me tell you something else. The Quran says, in tansurullah yansurkum. If you help Allah, He will help you. We need to stop believing in this, okay? Now, I want to quickly tell you a story to further illustrate this point, and then we'll move on to the Masa'ib, inshallah. When back in 2012, it was back in 2012, before I had come to the Hawza again, before I had gained the knowledge that I have gained now, okay? So I was just in the position where a lot of you are now. It was a really confusing time, okay? It was a time where Muslims were loving Obama. It wasn't as easy as distinguishing Trump. Trump is obviously bad. Obama was really clever. He was eloquent. It's the difference, if you like, between Yazid, who is an obvious enemy, and Muawiyah. Muawiyah was very clever. He tricked a lot of the Muslims into thinking that he was a good guy. So before you have the Yazid, you often have the Muawiyah who's disguising himself, and then things get revealed. This is what was happening back then with America, where people thought that Obama was so good. I had cousins who used to wear T-shirts which had the slogan of Obama written on it. Yes, we can. That slogan, yeah. So that was what we were living in at that time. And I was getting increasingly frustrated that people were just not getting it. Some of our community members in the UK were actually celebrating the royal wedding in the UK. You see, people don't realize that what they're actually doing is essentially worshipping the Taghut. That's what we're actually doing, but people don't realize it. So we were living in a time of extreme confusion. At that time, I made a video, and it was like I spent a lot of time in that video and, research and graphics and everything. I did it on my, with my laptop at home. It was called Karbala 2012, something like that. It's not there anymore because even though that video was really popular at the time, people came and watched it and they were thanking me and they were saying, I was confused and now I understand. My friends and certain people in our community came and said, Muzaffer, you need to take that down. You need to be careful. Exact same words. You need to be careful. You need to not bury yourself early. You need to think about your studies right now. You need to do this, you need to do that. And so I buckled. I buckled. I was weak. I was afraid. I thought maybe they're right. Maybe I'm going to go onto the MI6's radar. Maybe something like that will happen and I'll jeopardize something. I removed the video. Dear brothers and sisters, let me tell you, not a day has gone by where I have not regretted making that move. Not a day where I have not thought to myself, I wish I'd just been that much tougher and left it there. Okay, because, and this is what I want everybody to understand. Don't have regrets. Don't say that in the future I'll do something, because the future never comes with that mentality. Your day is now and you need to seize it. The moment you seize it, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, the moment you realize that the fight is today, you will see a major change in the world. You will see the dhuhur and the qiyam of Imam Mahdi happen today if you change today. And if you make it your resolve to change today and confront the enemies of justice today. And with that, if you can just give me a moment and give me a loud salawat, and we'll go on to the Masa'ib of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. I'd like to take you back a moment to that point we have previously made. They say our Mawla Imam Hussein was thirsty for two things in Karbala. The first thirst that Imam Hussein had was the thirst for water. But the second pain our Mawla Hussein had is far more painful. It is the thirst for loyalty, the thirst for allegiance. Let me take you back to Karbala, O mourners of Hussein. Today is a very difficult day, because today is that day where we remember all the companions have now gone. Now is the time where Imam Hussein, he goes back to the tent and sees that all the companions have gone, and the only ones who are left are his Ahlul Bayt, his family. They are condoling one another. They are smiling at one another. One is trying to pick up the other spirits. Habib ibn Mudahir has gone. Zuhair ibn Qayn is gone. Muslim is gone. And so now they are all alone. This moment must have been very difficult for our Hussein. Today, I'd like to take your attention now to a very precious youth. Yesterday, we talked about a companion who was very old. He was 75. He gave his life in defending the family of the Prophet. But today is even more difficult, because we remember a youth whose name was Qasim. This Qasim, what can we say about this Qasim? He was the son of Imam Hussein, the brother of Imam Hussein. And he was only 3 years old when his father, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, was martyred. This means that Qasim was raised in the household of Imam Hussein. He was raised in the house with Ali al-Akbar and Abbas. He was raised as an orphan by his uncle Hussein. He turns to Hussein and he says, "Oh, my uncle, will I also be among those who will be martyred? Will I also have this great honor of being martyred among your companions and your family?" Imam Hussein turns to this youth. He looks down at this youth and he says, "Oh, my nephew, how do you find martyrdom on my path?" Qasim looks at his uncle and he says, "Oh, my uncle, on your path it is sweeter than the taste of honey. How much basira must this youth have had? How much courage must this youth have had? How much knowledge must this youth have had to have given such an eloquent reply?" And it was not just words, no. But when the day came, I imagine that a tear came out of the eye of Hussein. For when the day came and this youth came to Imam Hussein and said, "Can I have permission now? All the others have gone. Can I have permission now?" Imam Hussein looked at this nephew of his and he said, "Oh, my nephew, how can I let you go when you are the only remnant of my brother Hassan? How can I let you go? Oh, nephew, go. I cannot give you permission." And so Qasim goes. He comes again and he asks permission. Imam Hussein says no. He comes again to Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein says no. It is said that at this point, Qasim goes to his mother and says, "Oh, mother, I wish to go and accompany. I wish to go and accompany the companions of Hussein. I wish to give my life in his way. But my uncle Hussein is not giving me permission." At this point, the mother of Qasim hands Qasim a letter. She says, "Take this letter. It is from your father Hassan." Can you imagine this youth now? How this mother had taken this letter, she'd carried it with her for the entirety of the journey. She knew that this moment would come. And so she finally presents this legacy and this will of the father, and she gives it to her son, and Qasim opens this letter. In the letter it says, "Oh, my son Qasim, a day will arrive when my brother Hussein will be left alone, facing an army of tens of thousands of enemies. That will be the day when I must be represented by you. That will be the day when Islam will need to be saved by sacrifice. On that day, I won't be there, my son, but you must be there to represent me." And so Qasim gives this letter to Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein says, "Oh, my nephew, oh, son of my brother, how now can I stop you now that you've shown me that these are the words of my brother Hassan?" Dear brothers and sisters, oh mourners of Hussein, now imagine when they are placing this helmet on the head of this youth. It's heavy, it's loose on his head. Now imagine that they're placing this armor weighs down upon him. And they say that Qasim did not have a horse. They say it is written that he is the one who did not have a horse as he was going into the battlefield. For as you know, when the enemies attacked the companions of Hussein, they looted their bodies and they took away their possessions, and by this point they had no horses left. They say Qasim fought bravely, even though he was only a young man. Even though he was only a lad, they say he fought so bravely that some of the forces of Yazid cried out, "Who is this youth? How is he managing to fight so well? Oh, cursed ones, don't you know who trained him to fight this way? It was no ordinary teacher, for the one who taught this youth how to use a sword was none other than Abbas, was none other than Ali al-Akbar." He goes out into that battlefield and he says, "I am the son of Hassan. I am the son of Hassan. I will not let you harm the Prophet's family." They say a moment came where Qasim went out and he bent down to tie his strap of his sandal. Remember, he had no horse, and they say that he defiantly went down to tie his sandal. He didn't even care who was around him. He didn't care, and so he's tying the sandal. The cowards, while he was tying his sandal, they came and they attacked him from all sides. One threw a spear, one threw arrows, some swung their swords. And it is said that at this point, when they were being unfair in the battlefield, Hussein and Abbas came running out onto the battlefield. They came running out to try to stop them from harming Qasim. But then they panicked, the horses all panicked, and they all started to trample Qasim. They started to trample him into the dirt. They trampled him into the sand. And then there was a dust cloud, and the forces of Yazid retreated because they saw Hussein and Abbas running towards them. And when the dust settled, Hussein and Abbas were kneeling over this mangled body, the body of the son of Hassan. And they say that at this point, Hussein removed his abba and they gathered up the pieces of this body in the abba of Imam Hussein and they took it away to bury it. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ka Shamma se Shamma jale, silsila jari rahe, hum rahe na rahe, ye azadari rahe. Shamma se Shamma jale, अपनी नस्लों को सिखाते रहो मातम का हुनर, सीना सीना करे बस ये आजादारी सफर, जैसी हालात भी है ये अमल जारी रहे, हम रहे या ना रहे ये शम्मा से शम्मा जले, लाख बदले ये ज़माने
साथ में शेख का जनून ज़हन पर तारी रहे हम रहे या ना रहे ये आज़ादारी रहे शम्मा से शम्मा जले सलवात अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you. That was Kumail Rizvi reciting the Noha for us. Again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us in today's session, especially our speakers, our reciters, on Murtaza, who started us off with the recitation of the Holy Quran, proceeded by Samar Tahir, who showed us a quick recap of yesterday's speech, actually the third lecture speech on how to identify rogue scholars, which was subsequently followed by Ahmed Raza. And then Shaykh Muzaffer Hyder, who obviously delivered a beautiful speech, and then concluded by Commemoration Rizvi. Again, I would like to encourage everyone to join us at the same time tomorrow from 6 to 7 p.m. Dublin time. May Allah accept our ibadat, and may we all continue in the path of Imam Hussein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.